He begged specialists on 3 continents. They all gave him the same answer.
Irreversible. Accept it.
For 8 years, the boy itched his ear. Every doctor said the same thing. Nothing we can do. His father spent millions, flew across the world, begged specialists on 3 continents to look again. They all shook their heads. Then a maid noticed something no one else did, and what she found inside that child's ear will leave you speechless. Riker Stone was a billionaire. Private jets, a 40-acre mansion, more money than most people see in lifetimes. But his son Kai was born deaf, 8 years old, never heard a single sound, never heard music, never heard rain, never heard his own father say his name. Riker tried everything. The best hospitals in New York, specialists flown in from London and Zurich, experimental treatments that cost more than most people earn in a year. Every single one of them looked at Kai, ran their tests, reviewed their scans, and said the same thing. Irreversible. There is nothing more we can do. You need to accept this. Accept it. How do you accept that? How does a father look at his son, the only piece of the woman he loved, the woman who died bringing that boy into the world, and simply accept that his child will live his entire life in silence? Riker couldn't. So he kept spending, kept searching, kept believing that somewhere in the world there was a doctor with the right answer, the right machine, the right miracle. If only he could find them. He had money. He had power. He had everything. Everything except the one thing his son needed. And then Mia Holloway walked through his gate, 27 years old. No medical degree. No credentials. No connections. Just a quiet woman with a bag over her shoulder. 3 months of unpaid bills back home, and a grandmother in a nursing home who needed her to hold this job together. Mia wasn't there to save anyone. She was there to survive. But from the very first day she stepped inside that mansion, she noticed something that 8 years of the world's finest doctors had completely missed. Something so obvious, so heartbreaking, so right there, that when the truth finally came out, it didn't just change Kai's life forever. It brought a billionaire to his knees. Stay with me, because what Mia pulled out of that little boy's ear is going to shake you. And what it revealed about the doctors Riker trusted with his son's life, that part will make your blood run cold. Subscribe, hit the like button, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I believe this story found you today for a reason. Let's get into it. The Stone Mansion sat on 40 acres of Connecticut land like a crown no one wanted to wear. Georgian columns, iron gates, gardens so perfectly trimmed they looked painted. From the outside, it was the kind of place people slowed down to stare at. The kind of place that made strangers feel like their own lives were smaller than they actually were. From the inside, it was the quietest place on earth. Not peaceful quiet, not the kind of quiet that settles over a house after a good meal and soft laughter. This was the other kind. The kind that fills a home when something that used to be loud is gone, and everyone who remains has silently agreed never to mention it. Sienna Stone had been gone for 8 years, but she was still everywhere. In the oil portrait above the fireplace in Riker's study, her smile caught mid-laugh, her eyes still bright, still lit up with something that death hadn't managed to extinguish on canvas. Riker sat beneath that portrait most evenings. Jacket off, tie loose, a glass of something amber he rarely finished. Just sitting, just staring. A man who ran 3 companies and commanded rooms full of powerful people. Absolutely powerless in his own home, in the dark, alone with a painting. The servants had learned. You moved quietly in this house. You did not linger. You did not ask questions. And somewhere in the middle of all that silence, on the 3rd step of the marble staircase, every single evening, sat Kai, 8 years old, dark eyes, his mother's jawline. He arranged his toy cars in perfect lines, one by one, with the focused patience of a child who had learned very early that the world was not going to speak to him first. So he stopped waiting for it. Mia Holloway arrived at the gate on a gray Tuesday morning, with a bag over one shoulder and a prayer under her breath. She had checked the address 3 times on the bus ride over. Not because she was lost, because she needed something to do with her hands, something other than reach into her bag and pull out that letter again. The one from the nursing home. The one that said 3 months behind in the kind of clean, professional font that made devastating news feel almost polite. Please remit payment in full, or we will begin the transfer process to a state-managed facility within 30 days. Mia could not let that happen. She would not let that happen. Her grandmother had raised her from 11 years old, had fed her on nights when the fridge held nothing but condiments and faith, had sat at the edge of her bed and prayed over her when life felt too heavy to carry into the next morning. That woman had given everything she had to make sure Mia survived. The very least Mia could do was make sure she was safe, warm, and cared for, even if it meant standing at the gate of a billionaire's mansion on a cold Tuesday, steadying her breathing like a woman walking into something she didn't fully understand. Mrs. Crane opened the door before Mia could knock. Tall, stiff, eyes that scanned and filed in the same second. She looked at Mia the way customs officers look at luggage, searching for something that shouldn't be there. The instructions were brief and delivered without warmth. Stay quiet. Stay invisible. Do your work and go home. And the boy, she said it like a warning, not an introduction. Do not get close to the boy. Mia nodded. She was just here to work. That's what she told herself. Mia kept her head down. She cleaned the East Wing hallways before sunrise, polished the banister without being asked, folded linens with a kind of quiet precision that made her invisible, which was exactly the point. She did what Mrs. Crane told her. She stayed small, but she could not stop watching Kai. The other servants had learned not to, not out of cruelty, out of habit. When something doesn't change for long enough, the eye stops registering it. Kai had become part of the furniture of this house. A small, silent fixture, present but unacknowledged. There but not really seen. Mia saw everything. She saw the way he pressed his palm flat against the cold window glass every morning, watching the gardeners move across the lawn, a world in motion that he could see but never quite reach. She saw the way Riker's footsteps would approach down the corridor, and Kai would straighten slightly, turn his head, and then the footsteps would pass, and the boy's shoulders would drop again, slow and quiet as a flag coming down. And she saw the gesture, the one that happened so often it had stopped meaning anything to everyone else in that house. A small hand drifting up to the right ear, a brief, tight wince. Gone before anyone thought to ask about it. Nobody asked. On her 4th day, she found him on the hallway floor beside his model airplane. One wing snapped clean off. He was staring at it with the particular stillness of a child who has decided not to feel things in front of people. Mia sat down beside him, picked up the wing, and clicked it back into place. He looked up slowly. The tiniest flicker of a smile. She waved. He waved back. The next morning, on the 3rd stair, folded small, a note in shaky handwriting. Thank you. It started with a paper bird. Mia had folded it from a torn page of her notepad during her lunch break. A small, lopsided crane, nothing impressive, and left it on the 3rd stair beside his cars. She didn't make a production of it. She just left it there and went back to work. That evening, there were 2 cars arranged facing the bird, like they were looking at it. After that, gold candy wrapped in foil appeared on her cleaning cart once a week. She never saw him leave it. It was simply there. She ate every piece and left the wrappers folded into tiny stars where he could find them. He collected them in his pocket. She pretended not to notice. Slowly, carefully, a language built itself between them. Not the formal sign language his tutors had tried to teach him with flashcards and frustration. Something older than that. More personal. 2 taps on the chest meant happy. A hand brushed across the chin meant tired. Palms pressed flat together. Fingers pointing up, that one meant safe. Kai only used that last sign around Mia. She understood what that meant. She held it gently. The way you hold something you know is fragile. Then Mrs. Crane caught her. Not doing anything dramatic. Just crouched at Kai's level in the kitchen doorway, returning his safe sign with her own. That was enough. Mrs. Crane waited until Kai was gone, then stepped close. Voice low, eyes cold. Every word measured and deliberate. I warned you. Get close to that boy, and you'll be gone by Friday. No references. No second chances. Mia nodded and went back to work. That night she lay awake with her Bible open on her chest, staring at the ceiling. Her grandmother needed her. Her job was everything. She knew exactly what was at risk. She also knew she wasn't going to stop. She heard it before she saw it. A soft thud, the kind of sound that doesn't belong in a quiet house, coming from the corridor that led to the garden doors. Mia set down her broom and followed it. Kai was on the stone bench outside, both hands clamped hard over his right ear, shoulders hunched forward, face twisted in the kind of pain that has learned not to make noise. Silent tears. The worst kind, the ones that fall without any sound at all, because the child has already figured out that crying out loud doesn't bring anyone running. Mia crossed the garden in seconds. She dropped to her knees in front of him on the cold stone and waited until he opened his eyes. She signed slowly. "Can I look? I'll be gentle. I promise." He pulled back slightly, just a fraction. 8 years of doctors who poked and prodded and left him worse than they found him had taught his body to flinch first and trust never. She didn't push. She just stayed there, level with him, and waited. He leaned forward. Mia tilted his head gently toward the thin morning light coming over the garden wall, and she looked, really looked, into his right ear. Her breath stopped. Dark, dense, glistening, lodged so deep it was almost hidden, but unmistakable once you knew what you were seeing. Her mind went immediately to Jalen. Her cousin, 6 years of silence, 1 procedure, and then a whole world of sound rushing in like a door thrown open. She had been in the room that day. She remembered his face. Her hands were trembling. She pulled back slowly and signed, making sure he could read every word clearly. "There is something in your ear. Something that should not be there." Kai's eyes went wide. For the first time in 8 years, hope. 3 days passed. Mia ate almost nothing. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it. The dark mass lodged in Kai's ear, and his face just before she pulled back. That flicker of hope in his eyes. 8 years old and already so careful with hope, rationing it like something that might run out. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't stop thinking. On the 3rd night, she sat on the edge of her bed with her Bible open in her lap, and she thought about Eli. Her brother had been 14, sick for months, a sickness that crept in slow and quiet, and by the time anyone understood how serious it was, they were already too far behind. They couldn't afford the specialist, couldn't afford the medication. She remembered sitting beside him on the mattress they shared, watching him struggle to draw breath, watching his lips move around words that wouldn't come out anymore. He had looked at her the whole time, right at her, like she could fix it if she just tried hard enough. She couldn't. He died in her arms, silent, and she had made a vow over his body that she had never spoken out loud to anyone but God. Never again. Not while I have hands and breath and the ability to do something. But this was different. This was a billionaire's son. She was a maid with no degree, no license, no protection. If she was wrong, she went to prison. If she was right and Riker found out anyway, she lost everything. Her job, her grandmother's care home, every fragile thing she had spent years holding together with both hands. The fear was real. It was heavy. It sat on her chest like something solid. And then, in the quiet, she heard her grandmother's voice as clearly as if the woman were sitting beside her. God doesn't always send help in fancy packages, baby girl. Sometimes he sends it through folks with nothing but willing hands. Mia closed her Bible. She had made her decision. Riker was away. The house was as still as it ever got. Mia was folding linens in the upstairs hallway when she heard it, a thump, soft and heavy, from somewhere around the corner. Then silence, the specific silence that follows a sound that shouldn't have happened. Her heart stopped. She set the linens down and followed it. Kai was on the hallway floor outside his room, curled tight on his side, both hands clamped over his right ear, knees drawn up toward his chest. His face was contorted in the kind of pain that had long since stopped expecting rescue. Silent tears streaked down his temple and disappeared into the floor. He wasn't calling for anyone. He had stopped doing that a long time ago. Mia dropped to her knees beside him. Her hand went into her apron pocket before she had fully decided, and closed around the tweezers she had been carrying for 3 days. Sterilized, wrapped in a clean cloth, Just in case. She had told herself that every morning when she tucked them in. Just in case. Her hands were shaking. She closed her eyes for 1 second and prayed the only sentence she had. Lord, guide my hands. Then she opened them. Kai was looking up at her, wide eyes, frightened. But something else underneath the fear. The same thing he'd shown her on the garden bench. Trust. Fragile and deliberate and freely given. She steadied herself, tilted his head gently, moved the tweezers in slow, careful, millimeter by millimeter. Resistance. She held her breath. Pulled, steady, patient, gentle. Release. Something dark and dense landed in her palm. Small. Unremarkable. 8 years of silence in the shape of nothing at all. Then Kai gasped. A real gasp, audible, sharp, full of air and shock and something waking up. He sat upright. His eyes flew to the grandfather clock at the end of the hallway. The one that had been ticking his entire life. The one he had never once heard. His mouth opened. Tick, he whispered. Then, rough and broken and unpracticed, and the most beautiful word Mia had ever heard in her life. Dad. She heard them before she saw him. Heavy footsteps on the marble, fast, purposeful. The walk of a man who had come home early and sensed immediately that something was wrong. Riker Stone filled the doorway. His face went white. Eyes dropping to Kai on the floor, to the tweezers in Mia's hand, to the blood. Just a trace, barely anything, on her fingers. His mind assembled the image, the only way fear knows how. Wrong. All wrong. He crossed the hallway in 3 strides and shoved Mia aside hard enough that she caught herself against the wall. He grabbed Kai by both shoulders. What did she do to you? His voice came out louder than he intended. Everything did, in moments like this. Kai flinched, the sound so close, so sharp, so overwhelmingly new that his whole body recoiled from it. Riker's grip tightened. What did she? Dad. Riker stopped. I can't hear you. The hallway went absolutely still. Riker's hands loosened on his son's shoulders. Kai reached up slowly and touched his father's face, tracing the jaw, the cheekbone, like he was reading something in Braille. Your voice, Kai whispered. Is that your voice? Riker's legs buckled. Just slightly. Just enough to see. But fear is faster than wonder. It always is. Security. Now. Mia didn't fight it. She let them take her arms. She looked back once as they dragged her away, back at Kai, who was on his feet now, screaming. His first real scream. Loud and raw and desperate and absolutely heartbreaking. No. Don't take her. Don't take her. At the hospital, Dr. Reeves set a folder on the desk without a word and slid it across to Riker. A scan. 3 years old. The blockage circled in red ink, clear as anything. Below it, a typed notation in clean clinical font. Dense obstruction noted. Recommend immediate removal. Below that, nothing. No follow-up appointment. No procedure scheduled. Just a separate flag on the account. Ongoing treatment protocol. Riker read it 3 times. They had seen it. 3 years ago, they had circled it in red and recommended removal. And then done nothing. Because a father who believed his son was incurably deaf kept coming back. Kept spending. Kept hoping. And hope, it turned out, was extraordinarily profitable. His hands were not steady when he closed the folder. Riker walked back to the security office alone. No assistant. No security detail. Just a billionaire moving through his own hallways like a man who had forgotten how to occupy his own body. He stopped outside the door for a moment, hand on the frame, and then pushed it open. Mia was sitting in the chair against the wall, hands folded in her lap, head bowed, lips moving slightly, not praying for herself. He could tell somehow, instinctively, that she wasn't. She was praying for Kai. He stepped in front of her. She looked up. He was not the same man who had shoved her against a wall an hour ago. His eyes were red. His face was the face of someone who had just watched everything they thought they knew collapse and rebuild in the span of 60 minutes. He looked stripped of something, the particular armor that money and power and years of being right had built around him. He said her name, quietly, almost carefully, like it deserved to be handled gently. And then Riker Stone, The man who controlled companies, who commanded boardrooms, who had not bent his knee to anything in 8 years of grief and anger and desperate spending, went down to his knees on the floor in front of her. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." He told her everything. The scan, the red circle, the notation that recommended immediate removal 3 years ago and was never followed up, the flag on his account, the deliberate, calculated decision to leave his son in silence because his pain was worth more to them as a revenue stream than as a problem to solve. His voice broke once. He kept going. "I trusted credentials. I trusted degrees and reputations and expensive offices. I threw millions at my son's silence and never once, not once, actually stopped to look at him." He shook his head slowly. "But you did. You saw him. You paid attention when every single person in that house had stopped bothering." Mia's tears fell quietly. She didn't try to stop them. "I just loved him, sir," she said. "That's all." Riker shook his head. "No," he said. "That's everything." They walked back to Kai's room together. The boy was sitting up on the hospital bed with a pair of headphones over his ears, too big for his head, slipping slightly to one side. His eyes were closed. His face was the most open, luminous, unguarded thing Mia had ever seen in her life. Hearing music for the very first time. Really hearing it. Feeling it move through him like something that had always belonged there and was only now finding its way home. He opened his eyes and saw them in the doorway. He was off the bed before either of them could move, crossing the room in 4 steps and wrapping both arms around Mia's waist, pressing his face into her side. She held him, both arms around his small shoulders, her chin resting on the top of his head, eyes closed. "Thank you," he said, the words still new in his mouth, still finding their shape. "You were always worth hearing, baby," she told him. "Always." Kai pulled back and turned to his father. He reached up and pressed one small hand flat against Riker's chest, right over his heart, felt it beating beneath his palm. His eyes went wide with quiet wonder. "Dad," he said softly, "I can hear your heart. It's beating fast." Riker's face crumpled. He dropped to his knees and pulled his son into his arms and wept, out loud, unashamed. 8 years of grief and guilt and love finally breaking the surface all at once. Kai held his father and listened to him cry, and Mia Holloway stood quietly beside them, hands clasped, tears running freely down her face, and for the first time since she had walked through that iron gate on a gray Tuesday morning with nothing but a prayer and a grandmother who needed her, she let herself breathe. God had answered her prayer, not with money, not with medicine, but with willing hands and a faithful heart. Sometimes that is all a miracle needs.